Hey there, welcome into the CHGO Sky Podcast. We are so excited to be back on the air today. We have so much to get to from the introductory press conference from new head coach Tyler Marsh. So many comments to break down, so many sound bites to play for you. We have a stacked lineup of guests for you today as well. We're going to get it started right here on CHGO Sky. What's up and welcome into the CHGO Sky Podcast presented by our friends at Coors Light. I am so excited to be joined by the best lineup of guests in the WNBA. We've got PridGeon-Garner there. You guys know him. We've got Siobhan Beslow, WNBA Twitter great. And we've got basketball legend, Nekias Duncan. How are you guys doing?
Yep, sounds about right to me.
I'm doing all right after that intro. I'll take it.
I like to listen. Legend around
we are just glad we can hear Nekias' voice. Give y'all a peek behind the scenes. We had some things going on, but we are here now. We are ready to talk some hoop.
I mean, we just following the Sky lead, technical issues and what.
Oh my gosh, sound at the Sky. Oof.
Picked up the baton for sure.
Now that you guys are here and we can hear everyone, initial thoughts from Tyler Marsh today. What did you like that you heard from him? What did you maybe not like that you heard from him and from the GM of the Chicago Sky this morning?
You can start with Siobhan.
Oh, there wasn't much at all that I didn't like, whatever it was that I could hear. But again, no, I'm super, super happy for Tyler. Have met him a few times. Just a wonderful dude. Just a beautiful human being and someone who, goes about the sport in the right type of way. Goes about it in a holistic, human-centered way. And I think you get, really, really good results with that. Incredibly experienced. Been in the video room at all of the levels, NBA, college, high school, prep. He's done the things. He's seen what it takes. He knows what it looks like. He knows what it doesn't look like. He's had to defend, he's had to be, Vegas target on their back. He's seen it all. And I'm so excited about him and what he could mean for the organization, for the program. And I'm just really, really, I just can't wait to get into his kind of basketball mind and what he wants to do with these pieces. Expansion drafts coming up, right? Like, who is he wanting to protect? Who is he, Savior 6 kind of, who is he want? Like, I'm really, really amped. And I think the team and the city got a really, really good high character human to kind of take the ship and lead it into these new waters.
I'd say just to bounce off of what Siobhan said, like, as someone that's also had some time to talk to Tyler, he's been on the pod, but I've seen him a bunch in Vegas and stuff like that. He does just seem to be a wonderful person. And like, we've seen some very loud examples to the contrary when it comes to like group consensus on a person, but it really feels like everyone loves that dude. The person that he is, the work that he puts in, the experience that he's able to draw from. Like, he nearly took us to church at the beginning of the presser, for crying out loud.
And then said, nah, I ain't gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it.
And so, like, it just kind of shows you like what kind of person that he is. And he was pretty clean and concise whenever he was asked basketball questions, talked about his journey a little bit, talked about the impact that his dad had on. Like, I think for me, as I have my own podcast, but like, as someone that is really quiet, I am curious to see like what Tyler in this kind of spotlight for 44 games is going to look like. So genuinely curious to see, kind of track that journey, because he's going to have to talk more now in a leadership role like this. But ultimately, passed the presser test with flying colors for me, and ultimately, I'm just happy for that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm very curious because from the outside looking in, he's always seemed more reserved in terms of being more of a watcher and selective with when he does decide to speak versus being the all out vocal type of leader. And there's value in either dynamic of that, but obviously as a head coach, you have to strike that balance a whole lot more intentionally. Being in a natural position of leadership and having to be able to communicate things. But to Siobhan's point, I think the value coming in knowing that he's someone that knows what it doesn't look like. I think it's easy to know what it should look like and all of the things that come with that. But being able to preemptively see things or see things from the outside looking in that are just like non-negotiables in terms of if winning is the ultimate desire, having somebody that has that lens that they're looking at things through, that has the prerequisites in terms of a resume that he has, which is thorough and as lengthy as it gets for a coach that's having his first time as a head coach. I think this opportunity matches him and he matches the opportunity. And I think that the response from the players, from Angel on Twitter moments after the announcement was made, to obviously Rachel and Elizabeth Williams being there by side of him today, really speaks to the direction that they're headed going into this now another new chapter in Chicago Sky basketball.
Yeah, I mean, one of the I would say the most important thing that I think Tyler's bringing to this is the championship experience, right? And knowing how to not only build a championship culture, but knowing what it takes to be in a locker room that's going to win a championship and that does win a championship. We saw him talk a little bit about that today, and I'm wondering, Law, do you have that when he's talking about championship experience, championship pedigree? A lot of his quotes on that I thought were really interesting and really just
there you go.
There it is, gave some confidence to his players. So he says championship teams are one of 12. Everyone has a huge part to play. Everyone has value. Everyone brings value. Doesn't matter how many minutes you play. That's what we want to create here with Chicago. Everybody know their importance. Everybody know their value and how they contribute to a winning franchise. I mean, that's what you want to hear from your head coach, right? If you're, the last player on the bench, that's exactly what you want to hear. And if you're Angel Reese or Kamilla Cardoso, who feel like they need a little bit of help, that's exactly what you want to hear. I'm curious, Steven.
That was maybe the quote that stood out most to me, because I think naturally the way that the Sky are set up and the way that the draft landed in their favor last season, they have two very loud in terms of talent and projection for what they can be at the peak of their superpowers on the basketball court. Very loud, and there's a lot of gravity that comes with that, to the extent that where sometimes you don't see a light shine on those pieces that really help to push things across the finish line. And following this quote, Tyler went on to mention how Minnesota got the ancillary efforts that they needed ad nauseum to get them to the championship round. Same thing with the New York Liberty last season. Same thing with the Las Vegas Aces in every championship that they've won. Again, just knowing someone that has been there, sees what it's supposed to look like, what it doesn't look like, and being able to have that attention to detail past just the pieces at the top. I think there's a ton of value in that. And I think he's going to have the type of reach from his skill development background to his reps as an assistant coach to be able to apply it in real time, get the most out of the pieces that they add to this roster over the offseason, and go forward into this new regime with, for lack of a better phrase, to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think just to bounce off of that, he's walking into that locker room with a level of credibility that a lot of assistant to head coaching hires don't have. Yep. When you talk about building a culture, he is someone that has figuratively and literally been a part of that process and has done so from the ground up. As you mentioned, the player development background in particular, which is going to be key when you have Angel, Kamilla, whatever the crop of rookies is going to come in with the draft coming up. He has that experience to lean on. He's been, you talked about the NBA experience. He has G League experience. He has D League experience.
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the
See,
video
kid,
room culture.
before it
Like,
was legit.
before it was so like he has seen, it was mentioned earlier, so I don't want to belabor the point, but like he has been at virtually every level of basketball. And I think that breeds a level of accountability, that breeds a level of again, like a respect in the locker room. And I think it's a nice blend of I know what this looks like, follow me, and also you can be patient with a guy like that.
Yes.
Which, as you know, the circumstances that opened up this job was the exact opposite of that. But like you can lean the level of confidence in, we can build with this dude because we've seen him build himself up. He's been a part of winning programs on top of that. And now we can slow play this and trust that the results are going to be there moving forward.
Yeah. It's a collaborative effort on both he and, Sky ownership, like you said, Nekias, to be able to walk into this partnership with a level of security and a level of being able to approach it with a sense of patience and laying actual foundations and being able to be inside and building things up. He talked about 1 through 12, and it's really easy to look at the Vegas Aces and look at someone like a Sydney who, isn't just a comedic relief for that team, who isn't just, this high energy, this high charisma character. Sydney is a WNBA veteran. Sydney is highly knowledgeable. Sydney doesn't get a lot of time. Sydney doesn't get a lot of the she doesn't get a lot of the glitz of what the Aces do, maybe from a production standpoint. But when we get those kind of behind the scenes game break shots, and you see Sid like walking people through defensive progressions and stuff like that, and then you have a guy like Tyler who can recognize and speak to Sid's value. So you don't have this dynamic in the locker room of, you have, your stars who may or may not feel like they, kind of have to listen to or really hear what, the roster spots 8 through 12, necessarily kind of have to say. You have a guy who knows that those spots 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, have value and can lead credence to the success of the whole. And we're talking about, player development. And I personally, not just kind of from a rookie class standpoint, like, of course, Angel and Kamilla, these are big slabs of marble, right? Who are kind of just waiting to continue to be chiseled at. But even from a standpoint of what else is kind of on that roster, I look at someone like Michaela Onyenwere, who I think her importance, I think her place with this group can be so highlighted. And I am gleeful at the idea of what Tyler kind of envisions for her. I have like my own envisionings and imaginations of stuff like, kind of what Michaela can kind of bring to that group. So it's just, it's a really nice culmination of time, space, moment, personnel, all kind of meeting and aligning really well. And Jeff and Tyler talked about the synergy in their philosophies and kind of their approach to the game. So again, I just, given where they're coming from and given kind of the tenor and other areas of the league, there's no doubt that they got a guy who, that they should feel comfortable with. It's not a question of experience or like, the little grumblings with like Phoenix and even Teaspoon, beloved first-year head coach Tyler, first-year head coach, but just has this laundry list of, proof and showables. So I really, really think that they knocked it out the park.
I love how you said they're slabs of marble that are like waiting to be.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
But patiently, but you only do it patient. If you try to take a chisel too quickly and too harshly to a slab, you'll crack it, you'll break it. It has to be slow. It has to be meticulous. And I think
not
that
the SpongeBob way, where you click it, you hit it one time,
and that whole right.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to Sid Colson a little bit because you guys mentioned it. Tyler talked about it a little bit in the press conference today. Just being that player that, maybe doesn't get all the minutes in the regular season, but you do lean on them come postseason, and you're leaning on them in the huddle, in the locker room, in all those places. Yeah. I'm wondering who that's going to be for Tyler on the Sky this upcoming season and going forward. Are there any people on the roster right now that you can think of that he's going to be leaning on in this moment going forward? Nekias, I'll start with you.
I think he mentioned in the presser, like Elizabeth Williams was going to be someone that he was going to lean on because of her, I think, 10 years in the league at this point. Obviously, going back to what you said, Siobhan, worth noting, Michaela Onyewetter also was in attendance, I believe, for the presser. I think her and Mariah Jefferson were the
Mojo,
other
yep.
two players. So if Mariah Jefferson is back, I feel like that's someone that a younger vet, but a vet nonetheless, that has that kind of experience. Lindsay Allen, if she's still there, obviously has a wealth of experience. And so I would imagine it's going to come in the guard room, because I think ultimately the guard room is going to be super important for the Chicago team moving forward anyway.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see what, which prospect they end up landing in the draft, things like that. But you saw how different they looked on floor when Lindsay Allen joined the starting lineup, as well as Kennedy Carter, as incredible as she was. But I think the relationship between Tyler and the guards in particular are going to be very important, because I think they're all going to play a big role in how quickly they can move Angel and Kamilla along.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's E-Will and probably Mojo, and I think it will look a little bit different than Sydney, maybe with regards to minutes played, because I do think he sees E-Will in a significant playing role, but I do think from a leadership, from a voice, from an extension of a coach's demeanor and expectations, I do think it's E-Will. Her leadership role with the NBPA, like, she's one of the stately leaders kind of the league, and I think he's lucky to have one of those type of people in his locker room.
Yeah, I think both of y'all checked off all the boxes, especially speaking on Elizabeth Williams. But I also think that even Rachel Banham, for the subtle comparison that he made between Rachel and Sydney, I think that Rachel, Big Mama as they call her, she's gonna have a major impact on this team in terms of being one of those personalities where we're talking about building a team. It's a puzzle, and you need some puzzle pieces that aren't necessarily shaped the same as others, but that help to kind of break the mundaneness that comes with the day-to-day grind and approach when you're trying to get to these lofty goals. It can't just be nose to the grind all the time. You need somebody to crack a joke every once in a while, loosen up the mood, and everybody's back to feeling more like themselves. I think something else that both Jeff and Tyler mentioned today is creating that familial culture to where people truly feel like they're like akin to one another. And that helping to kind of add to the core that they're moving with on the court, obviously, more than anything else. You need players like that. Those players come a dime a dozen, especially players that can still have an impact past just the personality dynamic that they add in terms of value. I think that Rachel is a player that does that, for the reason that we heard at the latter end of the presser today, where Tyler made sure to make note that they would be looking for shooting in droves. And in addition to the personality bit, Big Mama Rachel Banham also brings a whole lot of that too, which is something that this Sky team did not have a lot of in any capacity last season. So she checks off a ton of boxes for this team. I think he's going to be looking to optimize her, in addition to the free agents that they're going to inevitably kind of attract in the coming months.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into that shooting quote. He did mention Elizabeth Williams in there kind of jokingly, but first and foremost, let's pay some bills. We'll get right to that. Let's pay some bills, take an ad break, stick with us here. Between work, social media, and the choices life throws our way, it's no wonder we're more worked up than ever. Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn a rained-out barbecue into a karaoke house party? Matt Peck is always talking about the karaoke house parties at Will Purdue's house. They're legendary, according to him. Or after a tough loss, settle scores with an ice-cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. Personally, I'm choosing chill a lot quite lately with the Bulls and the Bears and every team in the city. It's fine. Make the most of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Dunk. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Light Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. We mentioned that quote on shooting. Law, if you have it, I'd love to take a look at that one. As I was watching the presser this morning, really kind of jolted me up a little bit, because this is not something that the Sky have had in the past couple seasons, and it's also something that we as fans have been screaming for. So this is Tyler Marsh. He says, "Shooting. We want shooting and lots of it. I told Rachel and Michaela in our first conversation, when you have it, I want you to feel the confidence of letting it ride, and that goes for everyone. He did then look at Elizabeth Williams and say, something to the effect of, we want to get you shooting too, which I thought, just kind of shows his personality a little bit. Siobhan, I can see you are loving this quote. What did you think about hearing this from Tyler this morning?
It's so, man, I can't express enough the way that I feel about Michaela with this group. And so for him to specifically name her as one, like, yes to all of that, get Rachel shooting kind of on the move, get Michaela shooting on the move a bit, clean up some movement patterns, period. Just, like you have these magnets down low. You have these two, you have a genuine 4-5 front court tandem, but they're young. And he said it in the presser too. He was talking about the dichotomy between he and his dad's approach to the game, and that his dad is more defensive minded, and that his dad said that Tyler is a bit more creative and maybe a bit more fluid offensively. And he said that they go back and forth about it, and he tells his dad all the time, like, hey man, those days of scoring 50, 60 points a game, we're away from that. We got to get points up, right? And I think that you see, and you will continue to see the opening up of the offensive playbook for the entirety of the W, right? And I think that Tyler, being someone who is already offensively minded, or offensive minded leaning, but has all of these different like takings of experiences from all of these other places that he's been. I'm so looking forward to an incorporation of just kind of offensive fluidity and shooting to this group, so that you open space on the inside, so that you can more cleanly carve out empty sides and pockets of space on the floor that you can actually get into from either pole. Like, it can't always be dumping it down with no one to kind of collapse it back out or to kick it back out to, and that you can feel comfortable about, comporting themselves well out there. So just getting more synergy just between the north and south poles of the team, period, through way of shooting, and what I'm sure would be just more motion. I'm really excited about what he can do with the pieces, who are already here. I know you can only keep 6. I have a personal 6 kind of in my head, but it can work and it can look really good. And I'm happy that he wants to usher, just a bit more expansiveness into the Sky offensive package.
Steven, I want to hear from you on this too, but I do want to throw out some stats just on the Sky shooting. Second to last in the league last season in field goal percentage, just 42%. And then dead last in three-pointers made and attempted. They only made 4.8 a game, and they only attempted 14.9 a game. So yeah, just bad. Steven, shooting, help us.
Yes, the shooting was non-existent for the team in multiple stretches, and you could tell by for one the scoreboard at times. And this is not even to try to pile on them. It's just speaking on what we're seeing. And you can also see it in how defenses were guarding them last season, especially when they tried to get into the many different types of movement actions that they did have as like a baked-in part of their offensive process. They just didn't have the respect factor from their opponents. They were like, that's cool, you can do all of these different things. We're just going to load up at the blocks and elbows, send double teams at Kamilla if she gets a touch on the block, and just kind of work from there, work from inside out rather than trying to worry about guarding the perimeter. That made it hard for Kennedy Carter to find driving lanes, which, for as prolific as she is, she still just figured out how to make it happen some way, somehow. But I think Tyler serving as almost like a master organizer for the offense, also being tandemized with having a opportunity in free agency to add the type of pieces on the margins for this team to help aid in them carving out space, to grow the collective IQ to when they're playing and read and react. It's not always just hitting the isolation button. Maybe we got enough time to get into an extra pick and roll that's going to pull at the defense because it's Angel or Kamilla that's rolling. And now that's going to open up somebody like Rachel Banham or Michaela Onyewere in that opposite corner for a wide open catch and shoot with like maybe 2 or 3 seconds left on the shot clock. I think just being able to give them more layers to their offensive process in that respect and giving them more organization, but also enabling them maybe even a little bit more to play more freely. There's a ton of value in those things. And I truly do think that there's going to be some things that happen in free agency that are going to set up the Chicago Sky for more sustained success and to see more productivity from their guard group in particular when operating in pick and roll, but also in catch and shoot scenarios.
Yeah, Nekias, you have thoughts on how they can maximize their shooting this season?
Yeah, like I think first and foremost, they need to add some, as reductive as that is. And so we'll see what this free agency / draft period is going to look like. I think this free agency period in particular is going to be very interesting as we're setting up for, the CBA opt-out, expansion, etc. So I would imagine it's just going to be a lot of one-year deals. And so, depending on what, who's going to be in the pitch meeting when they're talking to folks, like can Tyler and company grab some names that you wouldn't expect for just a one-year trial period? And can you get a boost of shooting in that way? And then you can kind of see the full vision. And I'm glad that you mentioned how Chicago was guarded, Stephen, because one of the frustrations that I have when talking about coaching on the W side, the NBA side, whatever, people will see the losses or they'll see the results and it's, this is all bad. This is the coach's fault, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't watch Chicago. There were some things to quibble about with play calls, particularly late in games. So it wasn't perfect. But just thinking about their base offense in the half court, it wasn't bad to me. It wasn't like they were just running poor sets or anything like that. It's just there's a level of you have to get into your stuff a little bit earlier. Chicago was 9th in pace last year, which that's more of a possession stat more than a tempo stat. But there were stretches where they could just get into their stuff a little bit earlier. But the bigger issue was y'all don't have shooting. You don't have pull-up shooting. That's cool that you're running this low stagger for Marina Mabry when she was there or Rachel Banham now. We're just going to switch that, or we're just going to go under this stuff and dare you to take these movement threes. If you don't take them, now you're just staring at a set defense. That, there's only so much coach can do to mitigate that part. So I think adding shooting to the room, again, very dull thing to say, that should just help open up the things that they already have established. I don't know if there even has to be a full-blown reinvention of the wheel with their offense. I do think there are tweaks to be made as you get a larger sample of Angel and Kamilla playing together. How much freedom are you giving both of them? We saw Angel get to grab and go a little bit. We saw her get to initiate offense, a lot of delay stuff for her. I would imagine that continues. And with the full, with an actual offseason to work on more things, she may have more opportunity to have the ball in her hands and to be able to attack from the perimeter. Not comparing her to the MVP because she is not that yet. But I think about Tyler's time with the Aces and we see the progression of Asia to where, okay, you can do more handoff stuff. Okay, now you can grab and go a little bit more. Oh, now you can just bring the ball up and we can just run early drag screens for you. Oh, we can fly you off of staggers and stuff. Again, I'm not saying Angel's going to be that in year 2 or if she ever gets to Asia level, but it's more conceptual. There is room for a little bit more creativity too. And I'm excited to see what Tyler taps into. And if you're able to add more shooting to the room, it makes it easier to do more creative things.
And two things in response to that real quick. For one, when you've been covering the team for a handful of years consistently, you kind of want an opportunity to ask a question like that, even if it does take place over Zoom. I'll leave that alone. But I definitely, certainly 1000% wanted to ask Tyler about what he saw in Angel and not comparing her to Asia because they're two complete different human beings, two complete different basketball players, but what he could see in terms of what might align with Angel in terms of her skill development. And I think that there's some similarities there outside of the obvious being that they play the same position and they're left-handed, that there's a level of skill that's not typical for a front court player in a more evolved sense of basketball. The late great Kobe Bryant talked about one of the dynamics that he felt would evolve the game most was looking at the Candace Parker template. A forward that can do everything. They can shoot a little bit, but most importantly, can grab defensive rebounds and transition to offense with that pace that Nekias is speaking to, and how that helps to align everything else, whether it's a literal transition break, a secondary break, or just getting into the offense early, like Bam Adebayo might flow into an automatic dribble handoff, and that's happening with 22 seconds on the shot clock instead of 16 or 15. Now you're
Yes.
cycling through multiple layers of your offense. You're making the defense rotate and work for that much more of the clock. That leaves them susceptible to compromise more. And now that's where you get those wide open catch and shoot opportunities. You get defensive slippage for backdoor cuts, things like that. And then the other big thing for me that I wanted to bring up before we transition to another topic was Kennedy Carter. I know that's another topic in and of itself that we can speak to, but her and Kamilla Cardoso were used in a lot of pick and rolls in the second half, or post-Olympic break rather, of that regular season stretch for the Sky. And they saw some good successes. Kennedy saw a little bit of two to the ball. Kamilla saw some good short roll reps at times and some general good roll reps. There's development that's going to be needed from her in screening. And if Kennedy is still around, her being able to knock down threes. But just generally speaking for Siobhan and Nekias, I'm curious, what do you two see? We can start with Nekias first, in Kamilla and Angel in terms of their pick and roll presence as screeners, as rollers, and as short roll decision makers.
Can I get in here? Can I get some of the offense a bit?
Mm-hmm.
I yield.
Okay, so you both said, and I'm only saying that so that I don't like lose, because you both have said a lot.
You got it.
Nekias, you're absolutely right. They ran competent things. They ran good stuff last season. It was a little frustrating. There was this feeling on W Twitter like the Sky don't run plays. No, they run plays, and they ran good things. And I want to give a little bit of love to Spoon in that regard. Like they and this was kind of the things that were taking me off guard, especially early on. They were running, yes, those low stacks, bringing kind of a Marina off. They were running some like half of the court floppy type of action, a lot of diagonal upswings. They did a lot of trying to post Marina, which I think that you can get similar looking types of things for a Michaela, just with that frame, right? They were trying to do a bunch of like low corner clearing out types of things. But yes, when there is stagnation, when there is not a charging of the floor on the second side, when there's not an activation of the other spaces of the floor in a forced moving of the defense, then it looks like it's stagnant. It looks like that there's nothing that we're trying to accomplish here. And I think that that's just a function of personnel. Stephen, you said, people not feeling like they needed to respect the rest of the people that were surrounding whatever the primary action was. The Candace Parker template, I've tweeted repeatedly. Candace Parker is the prototype, is the primordial stuff of the modern 3-4-5 big position. And it's not just her ability to kind of grab it and get it and bring it, start to break herself. It's not just the rebound. It's not just the versatility of her offense. She was a hub. Candace was a playmate. You can bring Candace to your elbows and be comfortable with her reads and her decision making and anticipation of what's kind of happening on her backside, a pinpoint passer. And so if they are able to kind of recreate anything, and there's so much stuff in Angel to the Asia and Candace comparison that I think that that there's so much that they can, kind of coax up out of her. To the Kamilla and Kennedy bits, again, they can only keep 6. But for as suffocated as the Chicago Sky airspace felt at points in the season last year, at one point, Kennedy was one of the leaders in the W at attempts at the rim and percentage at the rim. And so imagine there's no one in the league, and I believe this wholeheartedly, there's no one in the league that is as fluid and kind of creative. Kennedy's ball craft and her ability to snake in and out of small pockets of space on the floor, but exploit them and pop them and blow them up and find her way to the basket. The ability to have that, but to have people that you have to chase and move and respect to take those motion threes, Nekias, to take things. They're cycling someone underneath, but running someone off of like a staggered Iverson cut. To feel like I actually have to chase or like be with the person coming off the top of this, Iverson, like just adding shooting personnel into the mix for them, period, will you'll see a spike in kind of just the efficiency and the way that they're able to use themselves on the floor. And then Kamilla, wow, Kennedy and Kamilla. I think I just made that up. That was an accident.
I love that.
Sounds like a t-shirt.
The Kamilla tandem. Kennedy was the most creative entry passer for them. She's their most one of their most creative passers, period. And there was a synergy between her and Kamilla that I do think that they should continue to tap, and the high-low connectivity between Angel and Kamilla too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned Kennedy Carter several times there, and there was somebody in the chat, there it is, saying we hadn't said anything about Kennedy yet, so we've covered her a whole lot now. Speaking of the chat, as much as I love the number 24, I would love some more likes, so get in there if you're in the chat, drop a like. And come up with some more duo nicknames for us there.
Do it for our old friend Sky Guy.
Yeah.
Do it for Candace Parker.
Yeah, do it for Candace Parker. That's why I do everything in my life. One theme through this conversation that I keep hearing is they can only protect 6. That's something that I know we're going to be talking about a lot going forward. That's something that WNBA Twitter is going to be talking about ad nauseum. I'm curious if you guys have thoughts on maybe not who the whole 6 should be, but who part of the 6 should be. Nekias, do you have any thoughts on who those 6 players should be for the Chicago Sky?
Just in the interest of accuracy, I want to refresh on the rules as it comes to restricted free agents. Just to bounce off the comment, like Kennedy is a restricted free agent, so obviously Chicago can negotiate with her. Other teams can throw an offer her way, and Chicago can match if they want. I think it's going to be really interesting to monitor what Kennedy does, because she bounced back in such a major way in Chicago. I would imagine she likes it there and wants to stay there, but also
a lot of that was fun.
That it was. But again, bigger picture, expansion, new CBA, etc. Like, does she take a 1-year deal, bet on herself again? Like, I'm just genuinely curious of like how she wants to approach that kind of thing. But like, if you have to use one of your protected picks on a restricted free agent, like, you absolutely do that with Kennedy. With what she showcased last year and what she did with and for the bigs in particular. So Kennedy's there, Angel's going to be there, Kamilla's going to be there. Elizabeth Williams still under contract. I would imagine you want her there. From there, it gets fun. I guess Rachel Banham and Lindsay Allen to round it out.
Okay, I don't hate it. I mean, I'm curious what you guys think. Steven, I'll let you go next.
Nah, Siobhan been chomping at the bit for this.
No, Steve, go ahead. I'll give mine at the end. Go ahead, Steven.
Okay. Yeah, I got a similar template to Nekias. I'll preface with saying that I see a lot of value, as Siobhan and Nekias do as well, in everything that Michaela can be as a player, but especially in the context with everything that Tyler Marsh is going to look to establish with the team. And for that, obviously outside of Michaela, looking at Kamilla, looking at Angel, looking at Rachel, that's 4 names at that point. And that's where it gets tough, because you only have so much space, and you don't want to, I don't want to say make the wrong decision, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're not catering your roster to the brand new coach that you're bringing in, because that's the situation that you didn't have a chance to mitigate coming into last season. So I'm solid with those 4. Everybody else, I feel like, I don't know. I'm really curious to see what Tyler is gonna be seeing as far as assessing the Sky roster that he's gonna be inheriting before the approach to free agency, and then kind of seeing what he builds out from there. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at with it right now. I got a solid 4 names. Everything else is kind of a little bit more of a gray area. Obviously, you expect for Kennedy Carter to come back, but naturally she's restricted, and you got to go through that whole process. Nothing's guaranteed there. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with it right now. But overarching point, shooting is needed in abundance and spades and droves and whatever volume that you want to kind of use an adjective to describe it as.
If I could jump in very quickly, just a quick update on the contract front before Siobhan goes. Michaela is also a restricted free agent, so whichever would apply to Kennedy would also apply to her in terms of protecting the player. So that's all I had.
But is it so? Is it then that you can only keep one restricted free agent,
I don't
or
think
is
it's
there?
that. Like
Okay,
I'm trying to find a rule now. I know I mentioned Kennedy is a restricted free agent. I just wanted to note
okay.
that Michaela also is.
I don't think it's that you can only keep one. I think it's just more so playing that game that inherently comes with it more than
Yeah.
anything else. Yeah.
I had them. I wrote because I was working on a league wide thing. I had this written down somewhere. Okay, so I do. Um, purely from a talent and just a fit on the floor, I guess, type of way. And the where I place a lot of the value in this league and in the frames and in the bodies and in the size needed in this league, and who are the big dogs needed in this league and what you need to be able to defend those people well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Angel, Kamilla, I have Michaela,
Mm-hmm.
um, I personally have Kennedy, and then for the last two, I'm consistently juggling three. Um, I find a lot of value in Rachel Banham. I think again
Mm-hmm.
with shooting being tantamount in their desires and what they'll need kind of going forward, and I think it has to look a certain way too. Like you can there's I'm a firm believer in, from a catch and shoot standpoint, you can develop, build, grow anyone's catch and shoot acumen, ability. That's reps, that's game speed reps, that's intentionality. Motion shooting is a little bit different, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that Rachel's ability as a motion shooter adds a bit more to them. So
Mm-hmm.
my three that I toss back and forth is Rachel, Will again for the locker room presence, and not even just for that. At the start of the season, Elizabeth was balling, and it wasn't just defensively. Like Elizabeth was
Mm-hmm.
giving them good activity offensively, and it was set to actually really be a really versatile and dynamic front core group that the Sky had. Like seasons ago, the Dallas front court for me is just my favorite. Just kind of like in terms of versatility, back when like Awak was still with them, and just like that pot. I look at the Sky front court and have really similar feelings. So I have Angel, Kamilla, Michaela, Kennedy. I have Rachel, and then so Rachel, Elizabeth, and Izzy. For me, Izzy Harrison is another one of those types of bodies. Her and Michaela, I would put just in a room for just the two of them, and drill and turn them into something, one that they already are, but just really filling them out, especially Michaela, like in the three spot. But I think for my last two spots, I'm consistently tossing Rachel, Will, and Izzy, because I really love the front court of the W period.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ewell is
Will
one of
was
those
hooping,
players that will get picked up if
Mm-hmm.
you leave her out
and
there.
that's my
Somebody in the
dog.
chat just said it. If you don't protect her, Ewell will get picked up.
Oh yeah.
Like
Will, that's from the
she is
crib.
that
That's my homie. Love her.
she is that person in the locker room, in the huddle, on the court. Like she absolutely is the kind of person that you want in your locker room.
Yeah.
Is there anybody you know right now is a target for other teams? Aside from the obvious, you leave Angel Reese unprotected, those things are improbable. Is there anybody you're worried about losing on this team that is outside of maybe the main six?
For me, it's Michaela. I think that for what this team desires to be defensively, for what this team desires to have in terms of pieces that complement the front court players they have on offense, I think Michaela is every bit of what you need. And past all of that, we talked about Elizabeth Williams in the locker room. We talked about Rachel Banham in the locker room. By all accounts, from Teresa Weatherspoon last season to Kennedy to Angel to Kamilla, everybody lamented at Michaela being the best teammate. She could have a 0 for 6 shooting night, but as soon as Kennedy knocks down the three or gets an and one, first person up off the bench is Michaela, waving the towel over her head, doing all of those little things. And if you're looking at the things that align with everything that Tyler Marsh mentioned in terms of building that familial bond and culture, she literally embodies everything that he would desire from a player. So I'm expecting for her to be back. I could obviously be wrong, and we look back at this and come February and she ends up somewhere else. But I think that for everything that they've communicated that they desire, especially from players that are not your 1, 2, or 3 best players, Michaela's that. So I fear that teams are going to value her. I'll put it like that. Teams are going to value her, and you have to put your money where your mouth is in terms of valuing her in response to what she brought to your team last season.
I like that. Like, I think outside of Michaela, I think that's probably I guess her, just the restricted free agents period. Like, if there is anything hazy with that in terms of the rules, like if they have to protect Kennedy and they don't, like, do they end up looking back at that like, ooh, we shouldn't have taken that risk? And the same thing with Michaela. So I guess moving those two aside, I guess I would go between Izzy Harrison and Lindsey Allen in that regard, because I think there are cases for the Chicago Sky to say, like, Lindsey's a vet, but we feel like we can find, if we draft a point guard or whatever the case may be, we can turn this over to a younger group in the guard room, and maybe they look at like, ooh, we might have underestimated how much of a steady hand she was for us last year. And because you are building the boat naturally around Angel and Kamilla, and if you are bringing Elizabeth Williams back, there's an argument Chicago be like, okay, well, we don't need to also protect Izzy Harrison if those three are going to get so many of the minutes. And because of the versatility that Siobhan's talked about with Izzy Harrison, both here on her timeline, things like that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if she pops off somewhere else where she's just getting a consistent 24, 26 minutes a game. So, like, I think there is some real, we think we're going to be okay, but whoa, she's averaging 11 and 7 over there. We could have used that type potential with Izzy.
I think Izzy, Michaela, whatever happens kind of with Kennedy. And someone we haven't mentioned, and I know that, she's had a rougher than needed to be go of it recently in Chicago, but like there is Dana Evans has value. Dana Evans is a small guard, but she can do a good deal of thing. I wanted to give her name kind of a little bit of love. I don't know if she is one of those people in that group for me. If Dana left and went and had success elsewhere, that I would be immensely happy for her in that. But I do think, Nekias, your LA point, I don't think people give enough to the steadying hand and kind of presence that Lindsey Allen actually was for them at the top of their key, and kind of orchestrating and keeping them together at the top. So I probably LA, and then either Izzy, Michaela, Kennedy.
Yeah, you're not the only one mentioning Dana. There's a couple people in the chat that were asking about her as well. I mean, she's a fan favorite. You see every time she gets in the game, Sky Twitter goes nuts for her. So I think in that respect, it would definitely be a bit of a loss. There's one last thing from today's press conference I really wanted to ask you guys about. Maybe I'm reading into it. That's why I'm asking the experts here. The GM today asked about why it's going to work with Tyler when it didn't work with Teaspoon. The only thing, or well, I should say the first thing he said was, Tyler is about relationships. I said it to Steven earlier. To me, that was a little bit shady, and I was curious why he picked that one thing to key in on. Did you guys read into that at all, either with, how he felt about Teaspoon, or is it just about, how he feels about Tyler going forward, that he's really into what Tyler has with his players, his former players, and now his current players? Nekias, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I say I'll go quick. Like, I generally, when I listen in to pressers and stuff like that, like, I generally think I go into it the mind of it's positive and forward facing before I go to shade. There are particular circumstances where I was like, okay, there's a lot of backstory here, and I can lend with that lens. But like, just general human philosophy, I generally go with positive interpretation first. So I felt it was more hammering home how much of a relation builder and culture builder that Tyler is, more than any shade towards Teresa Witherspoon. I could be wrong, but like, that's how I read it, at least. I will say that did kind of further highlight, and this is something that I tweeted about after the firing, just the general oddity of, we hire our coach and then we hire our GM. And so, like, if there wasn't a strong relationship between the two, I don't know. I don't have Chicago's sources. But like, if there wasn't, then that at least gives more credence to reading into that with like shady glasses on, I suppose. But I ultimately took it as more Tyler praise than like slander on Teaspoon.
Sure, yeah. Steven?
Yeah, for me, I saw it as just more emphasizing what they're desiring to do with more intentionality going forward. I don't think it took anyone seeing things or being in person every day last season to acknowledge the relationships that Teresa Weatherspoon built last season. This is not even talking about halfway through. I'm talking about by media day. like I had multiple quotes from literally every player on the roster unintentionally asking, what's different about this season? How is it to have a black woman as a head coach? Things of that nature. And everybody's just effortlessly opening up, talking about a specific moment, that took place between them and Teresa Weatherspoon by media day. Mind you, last season was the shortest training camp session in WNBA history. So for her to have cultivated those relationships and generated that type of buy-in so quickly is different to put it concisely. So I didn't take it as shade, but I did take it as something that they're looking to emphasize and hammer home going forward under this new regime.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be read as shade because it word choice. Like you chose the words that you chose for whatever kind of reason that it is there. I agree with both of Nekias and Steven in that I think it was intended to speak more to the characteristics of Tyler, and less to denigrate or try to shade or speak against the relationships or the idea that Spoon wasn't about building relationships and cultivating and just being relational within the organization. Obviously, I'm not privy to the firing and what the culture or what things really may have been like behind the scene. So I have no knowledge of any of those things, but I do think that there's space to be read. It if that's how you kind of want to take it, and maybe there is some of that there because again, those are the words that were chosen. But I think that it is much more productive and probably time better spent applying positive thoughts and outlooks for it, being just complimentary of Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, relationships are something that's going to be super key for Tyler. You guys all said that. We know how close that Angel was with Teaspoon, and I think Tyler's going to have to cultivate a similar relationship because right now Angel is your recruiting strategy, and we'll see how it goes. Any final thoughts on Tyler, on the Sky, on anything before we get up out of here?
I was just going to ask if I could hijack the pod for like 3 minutes and ask a question to the panel.
Do it. Start the timer. 3 minutes, go.
Okay, so naturally Tyler's coming in. You want to see how he's going to build a boat around Angel and Kamilla, and a lot of that has been focused on the offensive end. But with Tyler having the experience under Becky, all the NBA experience under Nick Nurse, Nate Yorgren, everything else, how aggressive is he going to be on defense? Is like probably the biggest question that I have, like with the on-court product, because naturally like shooting is going to dictate so much of the offense. But like,
yeah,
are we going to see a bunch of zone from him because he's been under a lot of zone coaches? Are we going to see them like they've experimented with Kamilla at the level or hedging out a few times last year? Like I'm excited to see like how loud the dial is going to be on defense.
Yeah, so one of the things that the GM did say today that I wrote down in my notes was he stressed the importance of, quote, being able to guard, end quote, which is kind of the basis of defense. And it's the basics for him. So yeah, I think he was stressing, like, hearing Tyler talk about all the offense. I think in his mind, he's like, okay, wait a minute. We're going to play defense too. What that looks like, I don't know. Steven, Siobhan, maybe you guys have some insight on that one.
Steven?
Yeah, I am very intrigued by the idea of Tyler and his defensive principles and identity that he's looking to establish for this team. I think naturally with the way that this core is going to be set up, Angel is a great transition player. Kamilla is might be the best rim runner in the NBA or the WNBA, excuse me, already. Naturally, you want to put them in that context as often as you can. You can't get to that layer of your offensive process without being aggressive and taking some type of calculated risks with your defense to try to uptick the activity levels, get a ton of deflections, and just be aggressive in the passing lanes. I think that's something that they can definitely lean into. I think Tyler is going to implore for Angel and Kamilla to be even more active with their defense, whether they're defending in the post or defending ball screens. I think they will be mixing in a lot of zone with everything that they're looking to do defensively as well. I think that the way that this team is set up, especially if Michaela is back, there's just so many depths of versatility that they can kind of line up, from cross matching at times to obviously changing what specific type of defense they're playing in terms of coverages and whatnot. So yes, to answer the question, I think they're going to certainly dip their foot into the versatility pool and get as much out of that as they possibly can. You spoke to Kamilla spending time at the level at times against Indiana in particular last season. I think we see more of that with a little bit more frequency this season, especially with Angel being behind her if she is at the level, and vice versa. I just don't see a reason why they wouldn't, press that button more consistently. Last piece on that, though, independent of whether Michaela comes back or not, they have to find somebody at the point of attack that's going to guard, extend those pickup points, speed up the ball handler when they're trying to get into their sets so that they can't do so as comfortably as they did last season at times, and then let kind of things snowball from one thing to another.
It's fun. I think so. Yes, to the Michaela being a big part of that. Again, the frame, strengthen her shoulders, the strengthen her hips, and the way that she's able to play in space. You can dig with her. You can be in gaps with her. You can move her around. Again, they do need someone else in the guard room at the level for them. But if they want to get into some of the switching things with Michaela, they certainly can. Kamilla at the level. South Carolina did some Kamilla at the level stuff that I was not kind of expecting and ready for. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, shit. Oh, that's amazing. That's great. That's going to serve her so well where she's, projected to go. So Angel is a great defensive communicator. Angel reads things early. I've seen Angel hedge, pick up hers, kind of tag the roller, get back to hers. Angel can operate in pill switch situations really well. I think that getting Elizabeth back into the fold, you have another more active, kind of more nimble, lankier type of big that you can do things, really dynamic with, and hedging. Kennedy was good in the gaps. Like Kennedy, there was some discipline things, and like Kennedy would get lost sometimes, or just like ball watch and be unaware sometimes. But when Kennedy was locked in and engaged and active, Kennedy was aggressive on ball. Like Kennedy's hands were active. Her timing was decent, and she was disruptive. So I hope it's not. I think we're going to see zone principles. I think that I think you'll see like some fun, like maybe matchup types of things and flowing through, like disguising some stuff, I hope. But I want them to be aggressive defensively, especially again, if Michaela's in the mix, if Izzy's in the mix. I think those two are people that you can feel comfortable kind of anchoring and directing out of, like tag and roll and Xing out situations. And so I do hope that he wants to ratchet it up a little bit in man coverage defensively and doing some fun stuff. I had a chance to talk with him a little bit about some Vegas things, and we talked a little bit about Vegas POA stuff. We talked a little bit about some of the troubles that Vegas had with empty side action on left or the right side. Vegas had a lot of issues kind of with having a whole corner or side cleared out. And so I know that these are things that he is cognitive of. And of course, we'll want to correct in Chicago. But I hope the defensive intensity, I want this team to run. Like, let's be fun. Let's be aggressive and fluid and dynamic on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, fun is what I'm hoping for. I think we're all hoping for it. It'll be interesting to see what he brings over from Vegas. Obviously, he's talked about the culture maybe he'll bring over some of that defensive identity as well. Shout out to everybody in the chat who joined us. There were a lot of people in there, a lot of good ideas coming about, and a lot of reminders of some players that we.
I just wanted to bring up this one from Loyal Ace, who said, one thing I love about this group, y'all not only break down the game, but y'all are also relatable, and I love that, and I totally agree. I love listening to you guys speak, and like, you know, I'm going to your guys' single cameras, and then I see the other two just nodding, like totally. I love it. I love how much you guys are involved with each other, and I just love it. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Listen, you get Nekias and Siobhan on your podcast, you're gonna turn into a bobblehead. You're just gonna be the whole podcast.
That's what I was doing.
That's been me.
So
Here. Lawrence,
seriously.
I know if you had the solo camera recording me the whole time, that's all you would see is just that. So you got it. You hit that on the head.
Yeah, literally bobbleheads
That's
over
love.
here.
Appreciate that.
Shout out to all three of you for joining us. You can find Steven at PHNX Sports. He left us for the desert. It's fine. We're not upset about it.
Hey. I didn't leave. I just added another layer to
You know
my
what I'm saying?
resume.
Sure.
Right.
Wait,
Such an aggressive word.
Dual
That's
residence.
wild.
Wait a minute. So, Steven, did you pull the reverse Michaela?
Nah, I pulled
Right.
the car.
Now you signed the extension, brother. You said okay.
I see.
You can find Steven on Twitter at StevenPG3. Shout out to Nekias Duncan for joining us. He is the host of the Dunker Spot podcast, co-host, I should say, I believe. You can find him on Twitter at Nekias NBA. Siobhan Beslow, thank you for joining us. WNBA Twitter, great, like I said before. And you can find her at Siobhan Beslow. Shout out to the diehards as well. Thank you to everyone who liked. Give us a like on your way out. And hopefully we'll be back to talk to you guys soon. Go.
We all silly like the mayor.